Well, welcome everybody. Pastor Tim Karskadden here on the Pipeline Report, joined with Zach Karskadden and our studio producer, Eric Lawley. He's right back there. So glad to have you with us here on this Monday, the 15th day of September 2025. We're calling today's show Torn Between Two Opinions, as we're seeing our nation be divided, but also being revealed right now. So we're excited about that. We're going to cover a lot about the Charlie Kirk issue, be main part of the show today. So be ready for that information and be prepared to walk out what we are feeling the Lord is saying to do in this hour. We'll also talk about Israel and some of the battles. We'll even bring up some insight about Charlie Kirk and what he believed about Israel and some of the controversies, conspiracy theories that are out there about that and how we're to navigate in this next season. So welcome to the Pipeline Report. Let's get into what the Lord's speaking for us today. Well, thanks for joining us. We welcome you here again to the Pipeline Report on this Monday. Thank you for each and every one of you that's following us. And there on the comments, if you will, put it there where you're from. And we're so thankful for you. Kind of gives us an idea of what part of the country that's watching, as well as some of you in the nations. But we welcome you. We think this is a very important show today because we feel like this is a very critical moment in America. And this event of Charlie Kirk's assassination has brought that to light. So we welcome you, whether you're watching here on YouTube, on Rumble, or on our Facebook feed on Pipeline Report. So thanks for being with us today. Glad to have you and glad to have Zach here and Eric with us as well. We'll get started. We're going to talk about Israel always first. If you watched the news last week, Israel went into Doha, Qatar, and tried to take out some Hamas leaders. A very brave and bold action, the flight all the way from Israel to the Middle East and to bomb that building. Unfortunately, they did not hit their target. Most intelligence say either the Trump administration had warned Qatar or the Turkish intelligence information, but the terrorists that were in the room there were able to get out because of a forewarning. And so it was unsuccessful. Israel still feels like it released a message that, hey, we'll find you anywhere. I'm not here promoting, violence that way. I'm just telling you that's the statement that came out of there. And these radical terrorists are still active and moving. I don't know where they are now, but they were in Qatar at that moment, but were able to get out of the building due to being tipped off of what Israel was about to do. Now, we're going to move into standing with Israel because in the midst of Charlie Kirk's assassination, there is a lot of conspiracies coming out about him being anti-Israel, promoting the Mossad is evil and all these different things. And we'll talk a little bit later about Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson because they're part of that narrative. And we want to make sure that you're well informed and vetted properly on that. Now, I want to give you a little clip here of what Charlie believed. And I think this first statement of one of his trips to Israel is what I experienced as well. And the teams that we've experienced. So here's what Charlie said on one of his first trips there.
The greatest trip I ever took was to Israel, and the second greatest trip I ever took was to Israel. And I've been there twice. I'm a huge supporter of the Holy Land, of Judea and Samaria, and up against the terrorist organizations, Hezbollah, and the Palestinian Authority. I go to college campuses, and I've spoke at more college campuses than any Christian conservative in the last couple of years. Stanford, Berkeley, Brown, UCLA, University of Texas, University of Michigan, Michigan State University, you name it, I've probably spoken at major universities or states all across the country, from Montana State to Maine. And I am confronted many times by young Christians that believe that Israel is an oppressive apartheid state that basically should not exist in its current form. And so I'm here to clearly communicate to you that we have to do a much better job of communicating, of conveying, I should say, the geopolitical significance of the State of Israel. The world's a better place because of the State of Israel. We have all three monotheistic religions represented in the Israeli Knesset and the Israeli Supreme Court. Israel actually expresses freedom of religion. I'll never forget when I was driving down to Hebron last year, and you're driving down south from Jerusalem, and there's this sign, and I don't speak Arabic, nor do I speak Hebrew. So I turned to my driver. I said, "What does that sign say?" There was no English translation, and there was a arrow in the middle, and an arrow to the right, arrow to the left, and the arrows to the right and left were red, and the arrow in the middle was black or some other, not a warning color. And so I said, "What does that mean?" They said, "Well, if we turn right, you'll die." What do you mean you'll die? Well, if you turn right, you go into the Palestinian Authority-controlled territories, and as a Christian, a Westerner, or a Jew, they'll kill you. I said, "Well, what kind of ridiculous double standard here? If Arabs come into the Israeli-occupied areas, they're given benefits and rights to vote. You go into the Palestinian Authority-controlled areas, you get your head cut off." That was a really interesting moment for me.
And I think what he said there is so important because that's what we've experienced when we drove through the what is called Judea Samaria, what the world calls the West Bank. These big red signs, as you see as you go in, we were told by those who read Arabic, one of the things that said no Jews allowed. That is apartheid. You're seeing that movement right there. So, Zach, why don't you pop in here? Let's talk a little bit about what Candace Owen has brought to the table. As we know what Tucker's a little bit more, I won't say moderate, but he's not as vocal. Candace is like all out, full blown, standing against Israel. And she's actually pulling Charlie into this conversation now and saying that he was like her and he believed that she knows she was his friend and she knows all this. So why don't we bring her into this conversation? I think it's very important.
So where she begins is obviously in her disagreement in her theology via Catholicism that Israel is a nation that we as Americans should support because as most liberals like to, and I say that in a very direct term, to be this isolationist ideology, and you can sit here and say even Tea Party members, when you go back to the root of what a liberal actually means, would be a part of that mindset. And that's what ultimately what it comes down to is isolation, of saying that we don't need to support any nation, and it starts with Israel. Obviously, as biblical believers, we can see where that foundation can come from via the really two-state solution ideology there. And so when we look at this and we understand this, Candace Owens came out over this weekend and said that Netanyahu is lying, that Israel is behind the death of Charlie Kirk, and she knows the reason why. So does Erica, because somebody asked her, well, doesn't Charlie's wife know? Charlie's wife, Erica, who just recently lost her husband and the father of their two children. And the reason Candace Owens is coming out and saying this is because Netanyahu went on an interview with Fox and said he had a letter from Charlie Kirk and inviting him to where Netanyahu had previously invited Charlie to Israel, because Charlie had some questions around some very important questions about how October 7th happened. And Charlie, even from the very onset of October 7th, was asking, well, how can Israel ask this question? Because, as he said here, he said he's been to Israel numerous times, and he says it's a fortress. So how could this have happened? And what Benjamin Netanyahu was doing was he was trying to invite Charlie to Israel to explain it to him, because he didn't want to explain it over international communication, and he wanted him to really realize it and see it and explain the situation to him. But what Kansas is trying to say is saying that, well, Israel killed him because he was asking these questions. And in reality, Netanyahu was trying to answer it to him, but obviously Charlie has a busy schedule. Benjamin Netanyahu has his busy schedule, and this is what Israel does. They invite you to Israel because they want you to see the horrors of what happened. They want to explain it to you firsthand, and then they want to explain to you the differences of the dichotomy there. And part of the question Charlie was asking, he said, before October 7th, you saw Israel at this place of a civil war. And Candace's theory, off of her own opinion, off of no fact whatsoever, is that Israel caused October 7th to happen so that they could go out and wipe out 2.5 million people. And because she has this ideology of questioning Israel and not looking at the facts, she has this bent of saying Israel is causing these psyops, killing people, involved in this, controlling Trump, even though Trump said, told Netanyahu to cut it out when he was bombing people. So that kind of disproves that. And we're seeing kind of Candace Owens fall apart here, and it being around the Israel, obviously Tucker as well. And there's an interview, if you'll say something, I'll go find it, where Candace Owens was asked straight up some questions when she made comments about how when she went to Israel, she was explained about the Arab, Jewish, and Christian quarters and saying that these are the only places that these people can go. And somebody who's a Jew, his name's Ami Kozak, I'll go find it here real quick, is said that, well, that's not true. Arabs can live all throughout the Old City and in Jerusalem, all throughout the land. And she staunchly confirmed and said no. So there's obviously some bent there. And this breaks down to kind of this idea is we're seeing it played out with Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. And you really saw this kind of hit off with Daily Wire split with Candace Owens. And it comes down to this. And Ben Shapiro just wrote a book about this called Lions and Scavengers. I would highly recommend people go read it. And this is the crux of it, is that you have conspiracies and conspiracy theories. Conspiracies are things that are based upon facts that people either know privately and or information is out publicly for people to form their opinion and understanding on a said subject, i.e. this shooter. Okay, we know he was radicalized. We know he grew up in a Republican home, but he was radicalized somehow. How did that happen, et cetera, things like that. You could go on and on and on. Or you can say this is a psyop based upon my theory, based upon no fact that I have whatsoever, because I don't know what the letter said. I'm not releasing recent text. And so when you have these conspiracy theories, there's these opinions that are not based upon facts and or reality. And so you get these two different camps. And what happened, and a lot of what happened during COVID was you had these people who had these conspiracy theories saying, I think this is happening. I believe this is happening based upon their own just gut feeling. And not to sit there and say that can't lead you down a road to finding the facts. But the reality is people like this said, you saw this with John and I talked about this, the QAnon ideology here, of people coming up with these topics or talking points on said subjects and saying, well, I'm right. Well, what happened during COVID is those people were proven right. So now they think they're right about everything. And Ben Shapiro points it out in his Lions and Scavengers. It says you still have to have a foundation of how you process information. And what you're seeing now is the scavengers, or what social media, the younger kids call grifters, is what you're seeing here with Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson. Oh, I'm just asking questions. Why can't we ask questions? It's not about asking questions. It's about where are your questions coming from and what do they lead to?
Yeah.
And the point is if your questions are based around fact and talking about the facts of the case, because when you go back to Charlie's question of how did October 7th happen if Israel is a fortress, is that, well, it's very simple. There was a journalist by the name of Carolyn Glick who currently works for the Netanyahu administration who was asking these very same questions. Well, she dug into it, and she found that there were admirals and certain members of the IDF who hid this information from Bibi Netanyahu. And these same corrupt judges that Charlie was questioning of, well, how can these people be in power? How can we deal with the division within Israel? Netanyahu wants to deal with. People like Carolyn Glick were asking questions and wanting to get to the bottom. But what was preventing them from actually prosecuting and getting to the bottom of these answers that Charlie was asking was the fact that you had these corrupt judges who were preventing them from coming out and even questioning these people in front of a court and dealing with them either militarily or internally within the Jewish judicial system. And so rather than to the point of Candace saying Israel killed Charlie because he was asking these questions. It was, if Charlie were to continue to be alive and he were to go down, he would find the truth. I believe that wholeheartedly. It's because he had this amazing job, just intuition to continue to ask questions. And it's okay that the questions that he was asking, like, keep going down that road, he would eventually found it. But obviously he didn't have people in his camp who understood fully this issue, because very few people actually did around the world. And were actually listening to it. And when you pull Carolyn Glick off of the journalist front and put her in the Bibi Netanyahu administration, that kind of quelched that. And she was really probably the only person saying that.
Yeah, I found that clip where she says this, so we'll listen to it. Candace said this lie she was spreading.
They say these are the Muslim quarters. This is where the Muslims are allowed to live. That doesn't feel like a bastion of freedom to me. So I guess.
Oh, I don't think it's where they're allowed to live in Jerusalem. I think it's that there's an Armenian quarter. It's not saying the Armenians can only live here. It's that there are communities, just like there's a Jewish community in Jersey here, and there's a Muslim community in here. I don't think, to my understanding, it's not restrictions within Israel proper of where Israeli.
I think it is where they have. I mean, at least that's what the rabbi who was taking me around. He said these are the Muslim quarters, so this is where the Muslims.
There's your point right there. You have a rabbi carrying her around, misinforming her. So this is a big issue. Charlie did not believe that, and we just want to dispel that and be really careful and cognizant of the stuff that Candace Owens putting out. There's something that's got on her. I'm going to speak spiritually now. There's something that has gotten on her. I believe it's anti-Semitic, yes, but it's more than that. It's dogmatic. It's evil. It has gotten on her. I think she's functioning and manifesting in this spirit. And so we've got to pray for her, number one, that she would come to truth. But the fact is that we have to be alerted. Now, Charlie was asked if you've never seen Charlie, some of you may have never watched his Turning Point encounters in college campuses or wherever he was speaking. And he would let questions come forth. And I found one where a young man was obviously didn't want to tie our Christianity to the land of Israel. And Charlie passionately speaks, and this is an important thing to understand. They call him a political activist, but the fact is he always shared his faith at these encounters, at these events. And in the last few years, his faith message has actually increased probably more strongly than his political views. And I think that's important. So
Let me speak to that before you play this.
Sure.
So this goes back to Charlie's upbringing. He grew up in a mainline denomination. He was involved in a youth organization, and I'm not going to speak to the name of it, but the idea is this, is he saw pre-COVID and during COVID really highlighted this, is that you had pastors and a bunch of lay people and even spiritual leaders, religious leaders, who would have these cultural questions come up to them and they wouldn't answer it. And you're seeing it now. And the reason Charlie went kind of full force are on going forward with the faith movement and pushing things, because even in his TPUSA faith movement, what he was trying to do was educate pastors on how to engage in culture, and I think it's a great movement. And it's piggybacking off of things we've been doing for generations, and he got a lot of this from Lance Wall now, is that what he started to see was the questions that needed to be answered weren't being answered. And because you had pastors and leaders not addressing it, is when he said, enough's enough. We have to deal with this. You have all these issues that are not being talked about, trans issues, gay issues, like abortion issues that they're not speaking on. And so he went full force, and that's why he was so adamant about sharing his faith and sharing and standing up for these principles. And he tried to tie, he obviously tied both this is how this looks politically, and he did a great job of interacting and dealing with the lies that were spread on college campuses.
Yeah, I think that's profound what Zach just said there. So here he is. That question was asked of him about why Israel, and I think, I'm sorry, this is one.
The greatest trip I ever took was to Israel, and the second greatest trip I ever took was to Israel, and I've only been there twice. I'm a huge supporter.
Yeah, go to that next scene. Can you play that next scene?
Yeah, let me pull that one up.
What religion was Jesus? What did he believe?
Well, obviously he was Jew.
Where was Jesus born? Why does that matter?
He was born in Bethlehem, okay, and he was raised in Nazareth, and he walked on the water in Capernaum. What country are those places in right now?
What does it matter?
It does matter. You know why? Because when I went to Israel, I came in contact with the living God that walked on water and rose Lazarus from the dead. When I went to Israel, I saw the Bible come to life. When I went to Israel, I saw Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Sarah, Rebecca, and Leah. When I went to Israel, what I read as Bible stories popped open. And I said, this is the Word of God. This is real. These are not fairy tales or fables or things that we tell our kids. When I went to Israel, I was able to cry where Jesus cried, where he was betrayed by Judas and arrested, where he rose from the dead and gives us eternal life. I am not an apologist for Israel, but I reject wholeheartedly this narrative. Christians who turn their back on Israel, it says in Genesis and Romans and 1 Thessalonians, Paul said you will bless the Jews. If you bless Israel, you will be blessed. If you scorn Israel, you will be scorned. There is a diabolical satanic agenda every single day to try and delegitimize the scriptures. And I will defend the Holy Land, the place that let me see where my Lord and Savior lived. And I will not apologize for that.
That is powerful, to say the least, about what Charlie believes, and that he dictates or says what we believe ultimately. We've said it multiple times. I've said it here, but I also said on my podcast that we are not pro-political Israel. We are pro-covenant Israel, and the covenant that God made with Israel, the land and its purposes, and we are joint heirs with that through Abraham, and we've got to stand with that. Yes, there has to be a government. So when the government does what the covenant purpose of Israel, we're going to support them. We're going to stand with them. If they choose not to, if they were to promote a two-state solution, the government of Israel, I would stand against them. So please understand, when we say we're pro-Israel, we're pro-covenant Israel, and I think Charlie demonstrated that there. And so with Candace saying now that he's different than that, we need to make sure that we have the right information to negate that information that she's putting out. And Zach has a clip here about that to help us understand.
So I want to play this because this points to the very fact that Candace Owens is that Charlie was calling out Israel, didn't want to support Israel, and a lot of her issues there. And this is in her opinion. This isn't based on fact. And I have this video here. I'm going to play it. That Charlie was directly asked at an event about some of the comments that Candace has made, and just listen to what Charlie himself has to say about this.
About anti-Semitism online. Candace Owens, and I'm a big fan of you. I was a big fan of her, but she's obviously been going down this anti-Semitic bent.
He is ethnically, he is Jewish. Who happened to be Jewish. He was Jewish. The fact that they are Jewish, he's a Galician Jew. A Galician Jew, something other than human.
I do want to take what you say and extrapolate that there is a corner of the internet of people that want to point and blame the Jews for all their problems.
Those people who are still, their sense, are still in positions of power. That is what makes this unique.
Everybody, this is demonic and it's from the pit of hell, and it should not be tolerated. Period.
There's too much that I've learned about their history, about what was done to Christians.
They say, oh, it's the Jews' fault.
Everything that's being introduced by Zionists are being used to control us.
Okay, let's kind of play this out. Well, tuberculosis, that used to kill about 1 billion people. It's a group of Jewish scientists that came up with the antibiotic that cured tuberculosis. How about CPR, the MRI machine?
And when you think about Vegas, a city that the empire of gambling was built upon, your mind kind of goes to Miriam and Sheldon Adelson. We Jews love because we hate Catholics and we hate Jesus, and allows us to crush the church.
There's over 500 million lives that were saved over the last 50 years because of people that were Jewish scientists that were working on things.
Okay, so this is the defense, and more so the facts of Charlie himself, of when given an opportunity to stand up to the things that she was saying, look, he believed that it was demonic and a lie. And obviously he's very close. He had to be careful how he walked this back, dealt with this issue. But he just in himself did a very good job of kind of splitting the hairs. And I was talking to Eric about this morning. In Proverbs, it talks about this. It is in honor and even in prudence to the foolish. You cover, whether it be you hide and or you kind of give wisdom to it and knowledge. is you deal with it in a respectful manner. And so this is here Charlie doing that. And more so, the idea is not to directly talk to the people. Yeah, here we're calling this out here of the people because it's become so glaringly evident that it needs to be. But here's the going back to the conspiracy versus conspiracy theory thought of Ben Shapiro's book Lions versus Scavengers is you have these people playing victim and saying this ideology, this system has been holding me back. And whether it be, in their opinion, somebody of that ethnicity or background be the cause of it. And so now they say everybody is that, everything is that, rather than saying, okay, no, that's one person who did one thing wrong, and we want to call that one person out. And Milton Friedman talked about this is this idea of people saying, oh, the government itself is bad. Well, the government itself is made up of individuals. And some of those individuals make bad decisions. You know, the idea of the thought process that you saw during COVID of defund the police. Well, they're bad apples, so we must defund all the police. Well, no, just because there's a few bad apples doesn't mean you defund the entire police force. What you deal with is you remove those bad apples and you try to clean up and you do your best that you can to clean up so that you can serve and protect the people within your community. It doesn't mean that, and you're even seeing this with the FBI right now. She's calling out some things about, oh, why are they taking so long? Boom, within 3 hours they come out and find the killer of Charlie Kirk. And why are they doing this? Boom, it happens the opposite of what she's saying. And she's being proven time and time again the opposite. And she's going down these bins. And part of it has to be the question of, is this part of the social media drive? Is she doing it as a grift to try to get people to watch her, et cetera, stuff? That's very legitimate questions.
Yeah.
There to be considering. And so the reason I wanted to play that clip is because that's what Charlie Kirk thought about this. That's the same thing that a lot of people on the right, like Ben Shapiro and others out there, are looking at this is, look, you can get in these scuffles with the individuals, or you can look at the ideas that the individuals are trying to push out there. And this new book that Ben Shapiro put out, Lions versus Scavengers, does a really good job of that, of saying, look, okay, because he went through the throes of it, and legally he couldn't say anything. Yeah. And so this is his response of looking at the ideas of what's actually being talked about.
Well, I hope that informs you. Just be careful. Like Tucker Carlson, same thing. Look, there are bad Jewish people as there are bad Gentile people. There's bad Arabs. There's bad Indians, there's bad everybody in every nation. I realize that many Jewish people have much influence when we talk about Hollywood and other places, so they tend to have more exposure. But the fact is, if you don't know Jesus, there's a potential for evil in you. And I think the fact is that we cannot isolate a few people and say that is all the Jewish people, which Candace and Tucker are starting to do. We have to be really careful there with that and understand that. Look, God spent the whole Old Testament dealing with the rebellious Israel, so we know that element is there. But the fact is, we are still called, regardless of how those people are, to stand with covenant Israel. And that's what this house does. That's what we do here on the Pipeline Report. I think we want to honor the sacrifice that Charlie made, putting his name out there, doing what he said here earlier. We talked about how he stood with Israel. RFK talked about his encounter with Charlie, and I think that I'm sorry, I played the wrong one there, which is a very important one, which I think is critical. What RFK said here. Let me play this.
Religion was Jesus. What did he believe?
All right, it keeps playing that one. Hold
Share
on.
your screen.
I'm showing it here in my tab. View tab. There we go. Okay. For some reason, I can't get rid of that screen. Let's go ahead and let's talk about what happened in the House when they were asked for a moment of silence for Charlie. Will you play that one, Zach?
Yeah, so after the assassination, Mike Johnson came to the floor and was going to honor Charlie Kirk. And so we're going to play this moment. It's about a 2-minute long clip. And the reason I want to play the whole thing is because you can see Mike calling to prayer, and then you can hear in the background very softly. So if you kind of have a hard time hearing, there's a reason. It's because the C-SPAN clip that is being played, she doesn't come up to the mic and say this, but Lauren Bobart from Colorado comes out and asks for a moment of prayer after a moment of silence. And just hear the Democrats' response from this is just utterly appalling. And we'll get into some other things that are said through this that come out, and it's just shocking.
The chair would ask that all members present in the
I'm sorry. My bad.
rise for a moment of prayer for Charlie Kirk and his family.
So here you have the moments of silence that we see the entire House floor showing respect for Charlie Kirk, both Republicans and Democrats. And this goes on for a few seconds. So you don't hear anything on the House floor. Okay, so the moment of silence ends. Everybody's looking for Mike Johnson's speaker's attention.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Colorado rise?
He gives attention to Bobart.
Shh.
And if you hear her, okay, she's saying, can someone lead us in a prayer for a moment to honor Charlie and for his family? And this is the Democrats' response.
Let's wait a minute. The House will be in order.
You can't hear, there's some explicitives being said. And Mike Johnson literally brings the hammer down to kind of call the House floor to order. But it goes
House
on.
will be in order. Shh. The House will be in order. Shh. The House will be in order. We will join prayer right after this, okay? The chair lays before the House a communication. The House will be in order.
These are our congressmen. These are our representatives who are going at it like this. There's a Republican from Florida, Anna Paulina, who gets up and says, this one's on you. You have to own this because of the violent rhetoric that you have. And then you hear the squabble going back and forth. So that's what you're hearing there. It's hard to see. There aren't cameras in the room, so it's kind of hard to see and who's saying these things. But I paid attention to this. And so these are our congressmen from all across the states. This is how they're handling this moment of a simple prayer to honor Charlie and to pray for the family. And obviously Mike grants it and they go through and they do it. But this is the response from Democrats. Rather than just saying, hey, in this moment, let's keep quiet. They foolishly come out and speak out.
And I think that's when I said we titled today The Torn Between Two Opinions. This is what we're seeing. I think those that are with the Lord and those that are not, those who do not want faith in our arena. As you saw a big debate by Tim Kaine, Senator, and Ted Cruz recently. Tim Kaine got in a committee and decreed that our rights come from government and not from God. He said that openly, and they had to remind him what the Constitution says and why it was written, and yet he continued that narrative that God doesn't give us rights, government does. This is the battle. This is between God and Caesar. Who's going to be God over America? And not that we have to promote our Christianity and demand everybody listen to us and listen to our prayers, etc. But the fact is that is the foundation of our country. That's what our founding fathers started this country on. And these people want to change it. As President Obama said one time, the Constitution is antiquated and must be changed. He made that statement. And this is what they're trying to do. They're trying to redefine our nation, forgetting that our nation is great because of the definition of our nation, the foundations of it. It's hard to explain that to somebody who doesn't know the Lord. So I don't know that I can go there and help them, but nonetheless. And RFK, I think it's going to pop up on yours here, Zach, but I found his statement of talking about the cost of speaking out about this. So let me play this little clip by RFK.
And I had a conversation once with Charlie where we were talking about the danger that we both faced from challenging entrenched interests. And he asked me if I was scared to die. And I said to him, there's a lot worse things than dying. And one of those... the chief among those is losing our constitutional rights and having our children raised in slavery. And I said to him at that time, I said, sometimes our only consolation is that we can die with our boots on. We can die fighting for these things. Charlie gave his life so that the rest of us would not have to suffer those fates worse than death. Now it's our job, he's no longer there to lead us, to rush in and fill the breach and win this battle for our country, for God, and for our families. Thank you.
Wow. That's extremely powerful of what RFK said. And I think that's the point of what Charlie gave was his life. And we must carry on the message, which is what this Constitution was based on. So I want to honor him in that area and understand that's what we're doing here on the Pipeline Report. Zach and I and Eric, we're just trying to make sure that we keep the vigil going, hold that light up of what our founding fathers started our nation with, and not forget that. And what he said there, it's our life that matters. I think it was James O'Keefe was with Eric Metaxas, and they were doing an interview. And he asked, he said, how much are you willing to sacrifice for money? You know, your message is at 20 million, whatever. He said, I'm going to sacrifice my life, and I only want to work with people who are willing to do the same. And I think that's where we are, because everybody has a price, and our price as believers must be our life. I'm not saying I'm that brave, but I'd say that we give our life for the King, our Lord. And when we fight for our nation, I'm not fighting for political America. I'm fighting for covenant America. What God covenanted through our founding fathers for us to be, that's what we're fighting for here.
Yeah, something to take solace in is, even in RFK Jr., is looking at someone who lost their father prematurely. And when you pray for Erica and the two kids, there's a daughter and a son, is pray that they're able to continue to walk out. And I think RFK is a great example of that. There's hope for them that, okay, yes, they lost their father well before his time, but that there can be a healthy growth there in that. And even in early scriptures, you know, one of the reasons of for someone not to go to battle is if they're married and they haven't given their wife a child. And Charlie did that. And so now, obviously, I think he would rather be here, continuing to fight, and Erica and the children would rather them be there. But the reality is he's not here. So there's solace and there's hope in that. And so that's a prayer for Erica to know that there's a possibility and there is hope that they can be, raised up to continue to honor their father and walk out a path and not have too much trauma from this. Because there's no way that there's not going to be something they're going to have to walk through and deal with. But the reality is there's hope in that, and I think RFK Jr. is a great example of that.
Yep. And here's the Charlie Kirk effect that's starting to happen. We'll talk about this for a few minutes.
Tickets to see Charlie October 29th at Ole Miss. I was really looking forward to it. I've been a lifelong atheist. I never believed in God, but I saw the joy that it brought to Charlie. And it brought me to God. And really moved me to see him. And I was looking forward to meeting him and telling him that you helped me find God. And I saw that peace that he had. And so I'm here today to celebrate his life and make sure that people don't forget how much of an impact he had for all of us.
That's what's going on. Here's another one of a prayer vigil that's going on for Charlie as well.
Do you want to say why you're here, what Charlie Kirk meant to you?
He was my idol. Like, I remember watching his videos, wanting to be like him. Like, I would just see the way he would debate, and he was stayed calm while the left was just yelling at him, and he was just so nice about it. And then they hated him so much because he knew he was right, but they just didn't want to admit it. So they ended up hating him, and they just killed him for it.
What's your name? How old are you?
I'm Bryson Levy. I'm 14.
Man, God bless you, bro. Where are you from?
I'm from here, Oakton.
Man, I pray a blessing on Bryson. This whole generation, Lord, raise them up. Give them extra strength, extra power, wisdom and favor, Lord. I just pray your angel armies go with Bryson everywhere you go, brother, that God makes you a man, a warrior for this generation, my man.
Thank you.
Wow, this is some of the effect. Sorry, a little emotional, but this is some of the effect that we're seeing, what we call the Charlie Kirk effect, which is that many people are being touched. I have other videos I could play where people are giving their life to the Lord. Some of them are going to the church for the first time in their lives, saying, I want to be a better father. I want to be a better husband like Charlie was. And may that be said of all of us. And I think the demons of the left, I'll call them the demons, they're going to have to deal with this thing. They cannot understand when people say they look at Charlie and they see like an angel. That was the same statement that was said of Stephen. It said they gazed upon Stephen and he looked like an angel. I'm not comparing him to Stephen. I'm just saying the same narrative, the same language is being used. And they're going to understand, we hate this guy, but people are seeing him as an angel. What's going on? And we hope that that is a moment in their lives that they say, maybe I need to look at why I hate. And as I shared yesterday in my sermon, hatred is the sin of murder. So this young man that killed Charlie didn't start with murder in his heart. He started with hatred in his heart. And the demonic realm became engaged to a point where a spirit of death got in him. And he felt like he had to carry it out. He felt like he was doing good for the world by killing somebody. And that's a reprobate mind. And when you're reprobate that way, what happens is you almost can't even be touched. You're so driven by the demonic and the issues in your heart that you act out what the demonic is telling you to do. And the demonic is telling you, well, that which is evil is good and that which is good is evil. Romans 1 talks about that. So that's the whole the whole issue we're dealing with. And now it's costing people, and this narrative. I do want to spend a moment here talking about this because this is going to become a very legal battle with people losing their jobs for speaking out against Charlie and the death of Charlie. So let me play this clip. And this is a nurse in, I think, New Jersey or somewhere that had this encounter where she spoke out, and this is what happened to her.
No, I'm not fired as of right now. Right now, I am suspended, indefinitely unpaid.
Why?
So I walked into the nurse's station, and I just had learned about Charlie Kirk. I saw this guy. I didn't know who he was at the time, and he was standing there celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk, saying how he deserved it, he hated Charlie Kirk, and he had it coming to him. And
so you love Charlie Kirk. You didn't just aware of him.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Charlie Kirk. My first retweet in 2018 it was like my first blue checkmark retweet was Charlie Kirk. I was a couple years out of college and loved him ever since.
You're aghast at this, and what'd you say?
So I looked down at his badge because I didn't know, what job, if he was a doctor or a nurse, a
never
tech,
saw him
never saw him before. I looked down, I see his badge, and it says doctor. And I said, you're a doctor? I said, how are you saying this as a doctor, that someone deserved to die? I mean, to me, I was just mind blown.
And I think this is the battle we're having right now, because you're going to these two opinions we're talking about. Now, she's being suspended for reporting this statement. And you're seeing this happen. I don't know how many, David Harris, I don't know how to trust his data, but he's talking about hundreds and hundreds of people are losing their jobs because they're celebrating the death of Charlie Kirk. Now, this becomes a First Amendment issue, and we have to be really careful here. This is a fine line, and Zach, you can speak to this. This is becoming a fine line, because if we start saying you can't say certain things, and you'll lose your job, you'll lose your platforms, et cetera, Now we're teetering on the First Amendment right. The lawsuits are going to blow up everywhere. All these people are being fired. I saw one lawyer in South Carolina. He said he's being inundated by people who are being fired for legal help on how to fight this. And you're seeing this in England where you can't speak out on Twitter. You can be arrested. And we're headed that way. Now, we aren't upset because they're attacking the left. But the fact is, this could be us. We experienced this. This show experienced this during COVID, where we were being shut down for things that we were saying. So this is a fine line. We need to hear the Lord on how this should play out. I think everybody should have a right to say, even if it's evil, it is their right to speak. And I think the one thing that's happening in this is we're seeing who's on which side, the two opinions, is we're seeing those two different things. We don't need to be torn. We need to stand for what we stand for, but we are seeing this, and this is a huge First Amendment right.
The big issue is you're seeing there is a thing on Twitter that talks about this database that was created of all these people who are saying these things. That's very dangerous because it's not a government database. It's a private database. And they're encouraging employers to go on and see if they can find their employees there to fire them for what they said. To the First Amendment argument is you can't really stop them. The question is also okay, if they have this mindset, where else might they be lacking and where might you want to remove them? Is there something in an employment agreement that would cause it? Like, they're going to have to find some other reason than just them saying these things in order to fire them and remove them, unless they're in an at-will state and then they can fire them for whatever. So, but the issue becomes in those states where you have to have a cause, they're going to have to actually find a cause. And it's in an at-will state, you're still going to want to find a cause because you're going to have to be able to explain for your future employees, this is why this person was let go, because they didn't perform the job that they were hired to do. And in a lot of cases, it's very simple. Take that doctor. I can guarantee you there's probably somewhere that he's not doing his job, but that hospital could deal with him. And now the fact that they're attacking the nurse rather than objectively looking at the situation is cause for concern. And one, it's like, okay, look at these organizations, and you're even seeing the MLB and the NFL this weekend kind of flip script. 4 years ago, they would not be supporting somebody like a Charlie Kirk. Now they are. And because they had a huge and major backlash from how they handled the COVID riots and the BLM and everything involved with that. So it's kind of a thing. The power of the purse really holds sway here, and something that needs to be looked into, not just because you disagree with somebody that you fire him, because that's what Charlie Kirk was standing up against.
Right.
He was sitting here saying we can't stop the dialogue, because when the dialogue stops is when violence starts to increase. And he intentionally went on these college campuses to engage, to create a dialogue. And a lot of his tents that he had behind him, he said, prove me wrong. His whole point was, let's have a conversation because this has stopped. And those are things that we've prayed for, and he was an exemplification of that and an embodiment of that, and he went out there and did it.
What I like also is the bravery of her coming on television. This is something I saw yesterday when I was ministering, was the spirit of boldness is going to be released. For people that would say, I don't want to go in there, it could cost me more. They're saying, look, Charlie gave his life. I need to go ahead and speak out for what's right. That's what I see coming to this next generation, especially the Gen Zers and even some older than that, like Charlie's age, 31. I see that movement coming where we're going to see more and more of boldness coming out. I saw 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds speaking out. I have vision of that. I believe that's where we're headed right now, that we're going to see a whole generation start walking in this.
Yeah, and we want to play this clip because you're seeing the difference in the two opinions is obviously we understand this because we've seen it, but Dems are kind of oblivious to what they've been saying for really the past 10, 15 years and calling out violence. And this is Jasmine Crockett going on the breakfast table and saying that, let's remove his screen, Eric, and then saying, this isn't really happening. We've never said this.
I challenge somebody to go and find a clip of a Democrat invoking violence.
Challenge accepted. Go find a clip of any Democrat invoking violence. Here you go.
Maybe Donald Trump will go away. Maybe he will die.
I have thought an awful lot about blowing up the White House.
When was the last time an actor assassinated a president?
You know, there needs to be unrest in the streets for as long as there's unrest in our lives.
I just don't even know why there aren't uprisings all over the country.
There's also clips of Maxine Waters saying when you see a Republican, go and surround him.
That's right.
And attack him. And so this could go on and on. Obviously, we could spend longer and find more. And then if you go on Twitter, TikTok, the dredges of the internet, go down a deep dark hole, you could find a lot of things. And what you see in these statements are just the lack of awareness from Democrats, these two opinions that, well, we're not saying this, we're not doing this. And Nick Frigidas, the congressman from Virginia, state rep from Virginia, pointed this out. He said, look, a few years ago, he called this out, and he said, what you're seeing is this shift of the debate and calling debate violence. And this is where the twisting of the mind came in, is they started to substitute words and saying that debate was violent. So now that if anybody getting in a debate, that they can now violently attack them.
Yeah, I saw Pennsylvania, I think it was Pennsylvania Democratic state rep or something, said it's time for violence. We've tried everything else, it's not working, let's go for violence now, and condoning what happened to Charlie Kirk. Now, I don't know what describes or what the definition of hate speech is according to law, but I can't believe that's not hate speech. But this is where I think, again, First Amendment rights, I think the Supreme Court's going to eventually have to rule on this. President Trump, I'll close with this clip, made a statement about the investigation, and this gives a little clue what's going on behind the scenes of what he is saying is going to occur. It's a little hard to hear because it's a lot of background noise, but listen to him.
The problem, we have to be careful. When we attack people, we have to be careful.
You mentioned Charlie Kirk, sir. What organizations on the left do you anticipate investigating? You talked about this last week.
Well, the problem is on the left. If you look at the problem is on the left. It's not on the right, like some people like to say on the right. The problem we have is on the left. And when you look at the agitators, you look at the scum that speaks so badly of our country, the American flag burnings all over the place, that's the left, that's not the right.
Do you plan on investigating?
We'll see. We'll be announcing. They're already under investigation. You know, they're already under major investigation. A lot of the people that you would traditionally say are on the left.
They're already under investigation?
Already under investigation.
Have you asked to start revoking the visas of those who have celebrated Charlie Kirk's death? Have you asked to start revoking the visas of the foreigners who have celebrated Charlie Kirk's death?
No, we haven't, but we are looking at names. We don't like that. That's not right. We wouldn't celebrate if something happened on their side, and we don't. These are sick people. These are really deranged people.
Any progress on the Fed chairman, sir?
Well, other than I don't like him.
No, but
he's incompetent. The Fed chairman have to be careful.
He gets into the Fed issue. Now, I want to be honest. You know, I'm a big Trump guy, and I said Trump guy. I believe in supporting our president, but I wish he'd tone down the scumbag, all the different things that he says, because that's what the left is saying, that he is provoking them, or provoking the right to attack the left because of that. He could have said the same thing and leave out those adjectives. So let's pray for him that he be wise in that area. His point is that he said there in that interview that there's investigations going on all of them, on eventually students who are here on visas, who are speaking in favor of this. Now, that's a whole different game because their rights are not the same as Americans' rights. They are visitors here. They should be honored why they live here, and honor their opportunity to be here and not speak out that way. If I was on a student visa in India, I would not speak out against the Indian government and what they're doing because I don't have a right to do that. I'm not an Indian citizen. I'm an American. I think that's something that we need to pray for the president, that he use wisdom, that his words be powerful, impactful, but be wise in what he does, and don't give the enemy fodder to use against us in this battle. And the fact is that there are some things going on. Matter of fact, I think there was, I found an article, there was 2 Pakistani guys in Utah who tried to bomb a Fox trailer or something, and they had a sign, a flag at their residence said, "Has he died yet?" Speaking of Charlie Kirk. After that, so there are those okay, go after those type people because one, they may not be legally be here, but the fact is that they are promoting death and they're doing extremism, terrorism. Okay, that's a different issue. But if it's just your words, we're going to have a real hard time defining that. So I'll let Zach have the last word here.
The legal argument is you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, especially when there is no fire. Because what you do is you cause a ruckus and you could injure somebody trying to get out via an emergency situation when there is no emergency. So you cause harm where their harm was not existent. And another scenario to point out is, say, after the October 7th massacre and the student protest, is that, people were, and I'll give this analogy. People are saying, I don't like the color blue. Okay, you can say you don't like the color blue. That's fine. You can say all you want, but when there's a crowd behind you and say, I don't like the color blue, he's wearing blue, let's go get him, that's inciting violence. Mm-hmm. And this is the line that we're going to have to walk closely. And Speaker Johnson in the House, they did walk that line closely, in my opinion, in how they handled the student riots, because they weren't just going to kick out somebody because they were protesting themselves. You have a right to protest. Now, how effective it is, different argument. But the reality is what they went after were those who were in the riots saying, let's go do X to somebody, because there were innocent people who were getting physically attacked and harmed, some beaten, and in Charlie Kirk's instance, unfortunately, the loss of his life because of somebody's difference of opinion, because they thought that what he was doing was considered violence and took it upon themselves to take him out. And the argument we're going to have to really pray for wisdom for our leaders for is that they hold the line on something that is principled, because right now the right's in office and they're trying to walk finally on this. If they overstep and they go after somebody because of an opinion and say somebody needs to get arrested for their opinion, like you're seeing in the UK, when the powers are flipped, they can come against you because you read the Bible.
Yep.
And you're seeing that in Canada as well as a prime example. So we want to pray that they have a wisdom of how to navigate this and deal with this, because right now we have people who are on our side who are wanting for faith, family, and freedom as their guiding principles for how they're leading right now. But what happens when you get somebody in office who is against that?
That's right. So we got to look long term. So thanks for being with us today. We're looking for the future as well. The Pipeline Report here this Monday. Join us again next Monday at 12 noon Central. Follow our media pages. Also, my podcast today, I share the prophetic word I gave yesterday about God releasing currency to the kingdom to fight this battle that we're in right now. So thank you so much. Thanks for listening to our Pipeline Report.